We already have Diamond developers waiting to join us. They've been listening in. So we're going to have about 10 minutes, maybe a little bit less, of Q&A. Professor Fraker will be with us the whole day, so you'll have opportunities to talk with him both in the breakout sessions and other moments during the day. Let's just have some, we have 2 microphones on the floor, so who would like to start with a comment or a question for Professor Fraker? Professor Yasser.
Thank you for your great presentation.
Stand up, Yasser, stand up. And could you just give us your name, Yasser?
Yasser Abu Nasser from AUB Beirut. It's a very interesting approach to what you're doing, but just one question. Where does, with the examples that you've seen in Europe, where does food fit into all of this?
These were...
You have to press your button.
It's on red. Can you hear me? You can hear me now. These were designed in the mid to late 90s and constructed in the first 5 years of 2000s. And the issue of food was not really on the table at that point. A lot of work that we've done since then in my work in Sweden, the students, there's a long tradition of community gardens and food generation in Sweden. And I think it's a really critical issue. The eco-blocks that we worked on in China, we were getting 50% of the produce for those neighborhoods grown locally. We never got to build one of them, but we did look at food production. The semi-private space and the public space can be very, very productive in terms of food production. Is that helpful?
Did you at least look at the life cycle system, at least, the design and the structure is sustainable in a way, but at least where does the food come from to these quote-unquote sustainable communities and neighborhoods? And what's the impact of pollution and transportation?
I can just tell you it just comes from the typical food access in the cities there. And there's nothing special about that.
Another question or comment? Yes. Steve, you want to stand up? Got a microphone for you? Or over here. Okay. Sorry. Could you stand up, please, and give us your name?
David Mogavero, architect in Sacramento, involved in various environmental things. I was actually going to ask you this later because we've been investigating combination of food growing and sewage treatment, a good coupling of, and good integration. But I've been having challenges finding sewage treatment technology that can work at the scale of your Oakland Eco Block. What kind of success have you had?
That is a great question. There are companies that now produce these packaged sewage treatment systems in container, in the typical containers that can operate at that scale, and they clean the sewage water enough, and they keep the nutrients in the water, so it's very good for food growing. And I can try to get you some of that information.
The challenge that we've been finding is the operational costs. There's sort of a minimum scale at which the economics of sewage treatment work because of the, you have to staff it, you have to maintain it, and et cetera.
Yes, that's correct.
Have time for another question or comment?
Yeah. Hi, Jeff Lux from Tanatrucky. Very much appreciate the talk. Those places you showed bring back memories. I spent 12 summers in those same 4 places with my students. So, brilliant book.
Thank you. I've wanted to go on your trip.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, it's full. Anyway, the question though is affordability. Hammarby is not affordable for the most part, with the exception of the Baunger Mine Shaft, which you showed us in Vauban, which is a very unique German model. What kind of affordability did you see in terms of the housing and the businesses, in terms of just sort of, as opposed to a kind of an elite community with this incredible technology?
So this really highlights the difference in attitude and structure for affordability in Europe versus the US. In Europe, they don't subsidize the housing, they subsidize the families. So if you take those communities, at least from the data that I had, if you take Kronsberg, for instance, 50% of the units are occupied by people who need affordable housing because they're subsidized, not the housing. And you know the Vauban story of the Baugruppens, which is a tremendous success story. In Hammarby and in Bowl 1, there are also lower income families that occupy those places, but I couldn't get any data on it. It's a real dramatic difference. It means that developers can develop according to market, and then the families are subsidized, not the actual housing. Okay?
We have time for one last question. If you would stand up and give us your name.
Jackie Cole with Veritable Good. My question is, could you speak a little bit more to the horizontal development in Sacramento? I'm on the board of directors for the Community Land Trust, and we're trying to figure out how to manifest this relationship. And one of the conversations that I've been a part of is something similar to the horizontal development, so I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
That's a great question. We should talk about it during the day. It's good to remind you that up until the Second World War, most cities in the US were horizontal developers. In fact, most of the housing built from the end of the Civil War to the beginning of the Second World War was where cities put in the roads, the sewers, the electricity, and they sold development lots to builders. It was a money-making process, and that's how they continued to develop. So I'm not a good enough historian, haven't taken the time. I'm sure there are lots of lessons learned from that. But if the nice thing about a city acting as the horizontal developer, if they own the land, which takes away one of the biggest costs for affordable housing, and they insist on an integrated systems approach for all the infrastructure, you can make some real inroads in providing sustainable communities. The question is, do they have the money to do that? To do the work? We saw the 3 special conditions that funded those first generation neighborhoods. So you'd have to get some special money to have the agencies work together because their budgets they can't afford it. Right. So those are the kinds of challenges that I was trying to highlight today. But it's a very promising way to go. And we've been working with Oakland on all of this. I could tell you horror stories about selecting the eco-block. The nice thing now is it's coming naturally from the bottom up, which is the way it should come.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Fraker. What I'm going to now, first let's join me in thanking Professor Fraker.
Okay, thank you.